Welcome to the Bladtcast. Very excited to be live right now for those watching on YouTube and Facebook and Twitter. I know Periscope's not a thing anymore, so we'll just call it Twitter. We'll leave it
I
at
forgot
that.
about Periscope.
Yeah, so did everyone. All my comments on Periscope are, who uses Periscope? Well, you idiot. You're commenting on it. As always, as so often, Will Sterling, Jeff DeRay. We're very lucky to be joined today by comedian Zac Amico. He's on social media at Zac is Not Funny. His shows Midnight Spook Show and Bye Guys, which is co-hosted with also very funny Ian Fidance. They're available on Gas Digital. Welcome to the show, Zac.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. Now I wanted to get right to explaining why. Look, Zac is he's on these huge Gas Digital podcasts, including Real Ass Podcast. You hear him all the time. You see him on stuff. Our friend Zia did an episode of the Chip Chipperson podcast with you. So Zac is kind enough to do this show because I wanted to talk about this fundraiser you were doing. We have our number one fan of this show. His name is Matt and KC. He's basically our one and only patron, either that or he's our sugar daddy because he sends us Kansas City barbecue. He's created every piece of merch we've ever had. So he donated to this GoFundMe for Lou Bruno, which is a wrestler that you work with. So I wanted you to take a moment and talk about that, Zac, and how you're sort of enticing people to help out Lou by agreeing to do podcasts and watch-alongs for movies and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So I also dabble in the world of professional wrestling. I am what is known as a heel manager. I'm the bad guy that runs out and distracts the referee. And the guy that I've been managing the entire time is my best friend, Big Bruno. He unfortunately ripped his shoulder out in a match and had to get surgery. So we did a GoFundMe for him. You can, of course, always find the information that's on my front page on my Instagram at Zac is Not Funny. You can just search it, help Lou Bruno. And what I've been doing is anyone who donates a certain amount of money and up, I'll either watch a movie with you and your friends on Zoom, which is the format of my Spook Show podcast, or, just do people's podcasts, Zoom meetings, anything like that. Because he has 3 kids. He's a trucker. And when you rip your shoulder out, you can't drive. So we just wanted to make sure him and his family were taken care of.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, obviously, if somebody in WWE gets injured, it's all going to be taken care of. It's all going to be worked out. But on this level, I think it's important to just take a moment. And for those that are watching, you can see right now the GoFundMe. And like Zac said, very easy to always find a GoFundMe and help out right there. So we appreciate, of course, our friend Matt. Not only donating, but he's always, doing his part to get the show out there. And this was a great way to do it. Now, we've referenced a couple of the shows that you do. One of them, Midnight Spook Show. Talk a little bit about the concept for that show and just some of the movies that you'll watch on that show.
So Midnight Spook Show, in its easiest way, is Zac and different comedians or people from my world sit down and watch a movie and talk shit. I want it to be like a friend experience. Sometimes when you're with your friends and you watch a movie, you talk about the movie the whole time. Sometimes you never even talk about the movie. Sometimes you just talk about bullshit that's on your mind. And I kind of want to give that experience to people of what it's like to sit down with comics, artists, and other weird people and experience some of my favorite movies. And it could be horror movies, genre movies, B movies, anything that tickles my pickle at the moment. It used to be just horror movies, but now I've moved on to bad action movies, weird kids movies, anything. Or we've gone through a big John Travolta kick lately.
Oh.
Recent John Travolta.
Did you do the Punisher movie that he was in where he plays Jigsaw?
No, we just did.
No. He was in the first one. Jigsaw.
He was in the first one.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah,
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. Our John Travolta highlights have been. He just did Gotti.
Oh, I heard about that. Yeah.
Where
that was terrible.
Well, I'm going to explain the movie to you, and you'll know exactly what it is. It is John Travolta as John Gotti in a movie directed and written by one of the guys from Entourage with a score by Pitbull.
Oh no.
And
Pitbull.
it has multiple time leaps.
Oh,
So
no.
he's either like elderly or too young to be, or too old to be as young as he's supposed to be.
Oh.
And his family had way too, like Gotti's family had like influence on it. So they're trying to make him like an anti-hero who was just trying to do right. And the other Travolta movie, which I think everyone needs to see, is called The Fanatic.
Is that the boat one? Didn't he do something with a boat or a speedboat or something? I don't know.
The Fanatic, John Travolta plays a, in the nicest way possible, a person very deep on the spectrum who is an autograph collector who kidnaps his favorite actor, who's played by Devon Sawa. And
Wow, favorite actor.
And it is written and directed by Fred Durst.
Oh, wow. I mean, you can
and
just
I know
read...
what you're asking. Do they listen to Limp Bizkit in the movie? Yes. Yes, they do.
That is not what I was asking. I was asking if they did it all for the nookie.
They did do it all for the nookie. That's the interesting thing. That sounds like that one of those movies where you could just read the IMDb page. Like you just gave us 3 things that like we haven't seen the movie and we already know. By the way, in terms of Gotti, our friend Dominicus Saxon, I watched it a few months ago. It is really, really bad. To me, it sounds amazing. I mean, I grew up. I loved Mystery Science Theater 3000, obviously, but sometimes I would go and watch the movies without the robots, because like they did a movie called Robot Holocaust that was from the late 80s. And I'm like, no, be quiet. I want to see this because it's so funny on its own sometimes,
Yeah, one thing I will note about Travolta in The Fanatic, he was so proud of his performance. He bought himself a 2-page spread in Variety of a 4-year consideration for Best Actor. And he has what I can only describe as a bowl cut mullet. So it's a bowl cut that's long in the back.
Yeah.
And he spends the entire movie, his stims are, he pinches his ear and smells it, and he rocks back and forth. And halfway through the movie, you go, oh my God, I think he thinks he's doing a good job. And then you go, oh no, I hope he's not playing his son. Because he had a special needs son who passed away.
Yeah.
Jet. And you're like, holy shit, I think he's just playing his son. And this is the saddest thing that's ever been filmed.
Yeah, there's so many ways to do this, and it's the word that we don't use anymore. That they talk about in Tropic Thunder. When you go full R word, and he goes full R word. Yeah.
Oh boy.
And look, I mean that like DiCaprio was young in Gilbert Grape. I think he was great, and I Am Sam. You can get these movies where you get great performances, but this sounds like Zach. This might not be a great performance from what you're describing.
You know how I knew I was a bad person? In
What's
high school, me and all my friends thought I Am Sam was a comedy, and we just laughed at it so hard.
No.
And then I was like, oh, this is not a comedy.
Oh, boy.
Because he goes over the top. It's really hard not to think it's a joke. If you
I get it.
In clips, it's like a 14-year-old.
By the way, Matt, who's the one who donated to the GoFundMe, he said bowl cut mullet. Oh boy, I think you just sold Matt on the and it's called The Fanatic, or not The Fan, right? It's The Fanatic.
Yeah. And so if you want to know how full he goes to a big Hollywood like premiere party and goes to the bar and tries to order a strawberry milkshake, and then argues with the bartender that they should have milkshakes.
Oh,
it's that level. Like,
I don't have any.
By the way, he also just has a giant apartment in Los Angeles.
Of course he does.
And his best friend is like a hot 19-year-old paparazzi chick. Also, I'd like to note his job in the movie is he works on in front of Man's Chinese Theater. Like he's one of the costume people.
Oh, good.
But they can't afford the rights to any characters. So he plays a British Bobby. So it's Travolta doing special needs, doing a British accent, talking to people like, and then like people would be like, when you go to Man's Chinese Theater, you see Spider-Man, the Hulk, and a British Bobby.
This sounds like it's from Arrested Development, like the
one of those
Fantastic Four musical that they did.
Yeah, it definitely sounds like I don't know. I think that your spoof, your fake commercial for a movie, your fake trailer is nowhere near as funny as what this sounds like. You were saying, Zach, that you've graduated into bad action movies. Can I hope that the great Frank Stallone has made an appearance on the show, or if he hasn't, I assume he will soon?
Oh, absolutely. Is he not in Over the Top?
Oh, you know what? He is in Over the. I think he has a. Yeah, he is.
I believe he has a can. I believe he sings a song in Over the Top.
Yeah, and he also has a movie, and he's got a good sense of humor. We used to, the three of us used to work together on Dennis Miller's radio show, and we actually had Frank in studio one time, and he was promoting an album, of course. But the guy seems to have like a really good sense of humor about some of the stuff he's done. I mean, he has a movie called Terror in Beverly Hills, which is everything about it screams low budget, direct to VHS. And he knows what his body of work is. And I think it's the opposite of what you're saying about Travolta, saying like, well, I did this. This is clearly amazing. I think that I think you could talk to Frank Stallone about his body of work and actually have a good conversation. I think Travolta too, though. But Travolta, it's almost like talking to Tommy Wiseau about The Room.
Yeah, there's nothing like the actor who accepts who they are. Another movie we just did is called A Talking Cat, and I say it like that because there's a question mark, an exclamation, and a question mark. And it's exactly what you think. It's a family and a cat that talks, and by talks, I mean they put a Photoshop triangle over the mouth that opens and closes. And the cat is played by Eric Roberts.
Oh, God.
Wow.
And he very obviously recorded all his lines in his living room because the sound tone, like they'll be outside and then the cat talks and you go, this sounds like inside. And then I read an interview with the director, David Decato, he did some of the Puppet Master sequels. Now he mostly does softcore gay porn and children's movies. And he said that Eric Roberts did, in fact, record all his lines in 15 minutes on his own couch.
which I think that's how that's how you can get Eric Roberts in your movie. Can I record it in 15 minutes on my couch? The answer is yes. Because I once heard that you could get Christopher Walken as long as you have, I don't know what it is, like $200,000. You can get him for like a week or whatever whatever the movie is. And I think the price is a little bit lower for Eric Roberts. And
by the way, I know you said that the connection between softcore gay porn and kids movies. All the movies are all in the same mansion. They also rent out for regular porn. So you're watching this kids movie going, I know that stairwell.
It's like all good kids movies. It's got something for the adults.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, wait, which version of Richie Rich are we shooting today? Because they have the same title, But at what point we'll talk about how you got into comedy in a moment, but I was reading an interview with you and you said that you had to sneak watching comedy specials because your mom is so easily offended. So how were you able to kind of get into watching some of the more outrageous, extreme horror movies, stuff like I Spit on Your Grave, which I know has been on Midnight Spook Show. Did you have to just sort of hide them? Did you have a friend whose house you went to? How were you able to watch this stuff without your mom finding out?
Now, you just introduced two very different concepts, which is, how did you like I Spit on Your Grave, and did you have a friend?
Yeah, that's a mistake. You're right.
I'll tell you the secret to both dirty comedy and horror movies for me was the greatest invention of all time, which is the tiny TV with the VHS player built in.
Yeah.
So the small television with a VCR built in at the bottom and headphones. And many, many, many years alone, hoping to God nobody walked in while I was watching anything.
Yeah, no, I guess that makes sense. You know, it's funny because I once won a contest where I won VHS copies of all 3 Nightmare on Elm Street movies. There were only 3 back then, and my mom made me like sell them to my friend, but then I just borrowed them from my friend. So like, yeah, having your kid able to watch things in their own room, I think you know, it's just turn it down somewhat quietly. And you know, you're able to kind of, you know, fly below the radar, I guess. But
kids today will never know the how sneaky and how joyous you felt when you were able to just get porn from your friend and put it in a different VHS case. Had my mom known the amount of black porn I had brought home in Mr. Bean VHS covers.
Well, and is there any chance that Rowan Atkinson was in both, or is that?
No, but someone did get their head stuck in a turkey.
Mr. Flick the Bean.
Oh, I love that.
Oh.
So, yeah, I think that it's funny to, you know, just sort of see some of the movies that have been on the show. I saw a tweet from you that there was one movie that you said you didn't know if you wanted to subject comedian friends of yours to, and I think it said in the tweet that it was called Love on a Leash. And now I could have Googled it, but I thought it would be more fun if I ask you what that movie's about and why you weren't sure, you know, if your comedian friends who have probably seen some pretty outrageous things were like, oh, this might be too much for them.
You know, it's funny. I did wind up showing that to 2 of my friends, Mike Cannon and Paul Hooper. We did that as an episode, and Paul had a panic attack because the movie is so badly edited that it's disorienting. Like the shots don't match. So it kind of makes you nauseous in parts. And what Love on a Leash is, and I only found out some of this recently because through a friend, I got to ask questions to one of the actors in it. It was an elderly Asian woman had a dream to make this movie where a woman falls in love with a dog and then it turns into a man. She wrote it, couldn't get anyone to finance it except her priest of her local church.
Of course.
Who gave her $15,000 to make it, and she lied and said it was a movie about a woman finding the love of Jesus. She got it translated through a service
that
didn't do it correctly, so the lines don't make sense. And then she hired all local actors in LA to shoot it, but wouldn't let them change any of the words. So it's written in Chinese, translated incorrectly, and then read verbatim.
Oh, that's perfect.
So she made the movie. The priest saw it, wanted his money back. She winds up dying. And the movie gets sold. And I only found this out recently from the guy who voiced the dog, did Jeremiah Watkins podcast. Jeremiah Wonders, and I got to ask him. It got sold as part of like a big bundle of movies that got put up on Prime and wound up getting like notorious for the worst movies of all time because she had not gotten permission for any of the music she used. So when Prime bought it, they just took all the music out.
Right.
So there's 30 to a minute 30 stretches of montages to dead silence. Or like long establishing shots with no sound because they cut all the music that she never paid for. And there's just like, so the dog becomes a man who's not the guy who's the voice of the dog. So when he's a dog, he has one voice. Then he becomes a guy with another voice. It's completely disorienting. She cut it herself, I think. And there's a cut like it's cut like a fucking music video. I apologize. I don't know if I can swear.
You can.
It's cut like a music video. So there's a cut like every 3 seconds, and you feel it's like you want to throw up trying to watch it. And my friend Paul had a legitimate panic attack and had to stop looking at the screen and close his eyes during the movie because he was going to puke.
It's too bad that she wasn't able to get Eric Roberts to do the voice of the guy who wasn't the dog anymore. You know, I think he was probably available. Now, Will, I know you've got something important to head off to in about 10 minutes. So I wanted to bring you in for a moment for a movie that I mentioned to you when we were trading messages, Zach. A movie we reviewed a little bit on this show. I looked it up, Will. It was back on Bladtcast number 27.
Wow.
And this is episode 436. So that was 8 years ago. We talked about a movie called Frankenhooker, and it was kind of notorious because the VHS box had the Frankenhooker on it, and she would say, want a date, like she does in the movie. And to me, that was sort of like the epitome of like, oh, that was when I think I realized like, oh, that, you go from looking at the box and thinking like, oh, this movie looks so bad. But then you realize like, yeah, but that could actually make it fun. I mean, are you disappointed ever, Zach, when a movie's actually like, oh, this is actually really good? Or is it a relief? If this dog movie had actually somehow been amazing, would it have been more fun?
I think there's plenty of bad movies that are good. If everyone in it thinks they're doing a good job, there's something enticing and wonderful about it, where it's almost like this positivity. And I think Frankenhooker I think Henenlotter's a great director, and he's made really good, very low budget movies. Frankenhooker being probably the most accessible.
Sure.
And no, I'm never. If it's bad, it's bad. If it's good, it's good. I just like movie. Like I just love movies.
Yeah, and Will, as I said, I know it was a while ago, and that we watched Frankenhooker, but I think, had you ever even heard of it, Will, before we watched it for the show?
I want to say it sounded familiar. I think you just seeing silly pictures, and you had talked about it for a while.
Yeah,
even before we watched it, because I think your friend, like I borrowed your friend's DVD of it or something.
Yeah, right. Of course.
So, like we passed that around like we were 12 years old in middle school. Yeah.
Exactly. They recirculated it when DVD came around. That's
yeah. Well, no, because you had to you wanted to get it on DVD. And Jeff, did you get a chance to check out Frankenhooker at all, Jeff?
I did.
Yeah. So he's just watched it. So I want to get some fresh eyes while we talk about this movie for a few minutes.
I mean, I don't think I have the best impression. It was just one of those movies where I was like, okay. I just wasn't. I don't know. It just didn't. It wasn't like I wasn't into it. It was kind of like
that's fair. Yeah.
Which I was like, okay. I don't know. I've watched a bunch of like old horror movies in the last few months, right? Like The Thing and some of those. Sure. So watching one like this was just like, oh, this is bad without an excuse. Okay. So it was fine.
And I totally get it. It's not for everybody. What I love about that movie, and especially like Basket Case and some other Henenlotter movies, they're a perfect time capsule of the New York everyone thinks of.
Yeah.
The Grindhouse era, 42nd Street was still dangerous, grimy New York. I think those movies capture it as good as like Taxi Driver.
Yeah, I think that, when you had your movies that actually shot in New York at that time, I do remember when we talked about it, even though it was 8 years ago, I do remember we talked about like I was actually going to I think I just came back from New York, and it was like, yeah, that's not, this is why, like, because I grew up in the New York area. This is why I didn't go into New York regularly until I was like in high school, because my parents always had this idea of like, well, you don't go there. You don't go into the city. It's like, unless you have something very specific, if we went on a school field trip to like a museum or something, my mom was like worried, and the getting to see it in those movies like that. What were you going to say, Jeff?
I was just going to say, I as you're talking about, the one thing I did notice is there's a bunch of scenes in that movie that you could say have been like ripped off in the time since, right? Like that closing scene is basically Revenge of the Sith with Anakin on the table. Like, no, I have boobies.
It's a great point.
There was another scene that I was like, oh, like when he's doing the trepanation, just reminded me of Pi, even though it's like not the same movie at all. So there's just like a bunch of stuff where I'm like, oh, I've seen that in a different movie that since then.
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
People watched and then stole scenes from him. Just was like, no one will know.
Is that something you run into a lot, Zach, when you're watching some of these more obscure movies, where you might see something like I don't know why George Lucas was watching Frankenhooker, but it wouldn't surprise me, in all honesty.
You see that a lot,
stuff, yeah,
especially the way things are shot, or like the way monsters are shot, or the way effects are shot. There's definitely overlap, like even, and this is very recent, the new Conjuring that's coming out has a face coming out of a waterbed, and the director in an interview recently said he completely stole it from Nightmare on Elm Street 4, to the point where he hired the director of photography to tell him how they shot it.
Oh wow, that's interesting. Will, I again, before you go, what give us one of sort of these like extreme, you can call them bad horror movies, but I like to think of them as more extreme. What's one of those that you were surprised by, Will? I don't doubt that Zach has seen it, but one that you're just like, oh yeah, like Frankenhooker level, something that's a little bit more obscure.
Funny enough, a buddy of mine, I love Vincent Price, and a buddy of mine bought me this like Vincent Price in Edgar Allan Poe stories, all directed by Roger Corman, and the Raven was like, I was sort of expecting to like kind of loosely follow it. It is the most fucking insane movie like I have ever seen, where him and it's just full of like old horror actors, and there's like lightning, and they're wizards, and they're like battling each other with their like electricity powers, and him and Boris Karloff are like old enemies. This is young Jack Nicholson. It is like the fact that it's called like Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven is the most insane thing in the world, because it's the fucking craziest movie I've seen in the past like 10 years. It makes no sense.
I heard that the problem they had with that one was they couldn't use any of the original text because it's like slotted that you can't quote The Raven evermore.
Jesus. A little bit of a long.
I knew this was like a setup. I was like, where are we going?
Where are we going? But that's where we went. Yeah, I mean, I think that Vincent Price, Zach, seems like one of those guys who worked. Let's just say he had an affordable rate. I think that you could get him in your movie. It was maybe not Eric Roberts level, but he's in so many things. Like, to have a set of Vincent Price movies is probably impossible to put together.
I think he's one of those guys. I would put him like somebody like Christopher Walken. It's not necessarily that they have a low rate; it's that they love to work.
Yeah, that's fair.
And like the amount of, there's actually something that was just on Shudder called Monster Party, and it's one of the movies that'll have like 3 stories, but the back line of it's Price, I think Peter Cushing, and one more guy, and they go to a nightclub where different new wave bands are playing, and the audience is all monsters. Of course. So it's an anthology movie, so it's just Vincent Price and all these old horror guys hanging out at a punk club, but the entire crowd is just people in bad Halloween masks dancing to like new wave bands. And then it'll cut to a story. Then it'll come back and it'll be another song. And like Vincent Price sitting there, like sipping blood gaily.
Oh, I love that.
It's really, really fun.
Well, Will, before we let you go, we talked a little bit about, some movies of questionable quality. What do you, on your way out, want to say is maybe your favorite, one of the best? It doesn't have to be the best, but what do you think is like, oh, this is a horror movie that nailed it? Maybe it surprised you. Maybe it was a classic that everybody told you should watch. What do you think is sort of, like, oh, if you're going to watch a horror movie, it should be this?
You know what? One of the ones I always recommend to a lot of people is the 76 or so remake of Invasion of the Body Snatchers with Donald Sutherland. That's just such a fucking great movie, and that's something that, like, it was on a bunch of lists, and I didn't really have any expectations, and I sat down to watch it, and just Nimoy's part in it, and just this refusal to be like, they're all turning into aliens or whatever, but the kind of humanity, the last shred of humanity, kind of fight back emotional side of it sort of took me by surprise. So like that's always one that I tell people to watch.
Right, and I assume at some point you checked out the original, but the 76
Yeah, I like the original too.
Sure.
But yeah.
All right. Well, Will Sterling at Will Sterling _ you're off to a gig. You're a working actor, right?
I quit one job and booked another one shortly. Yeah, so it's freelance stuff, but
That's cool. Well, at Will Sterling _ and Will, we have a little bit. We have some more mainstream movies to get caught up on. We still haven't talked about Godzilla versus King Kong or Mortal Kombat, which are new movies, but in the way where they're in the theater and also in your house, which is very confusing. But we will talk about that next time. Thank you, Will. We appreciate you.
Good meeting you, Will.
Nice to meet you, Zach. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Bye.
What about that Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Zach? Do you?
So scary.
Yeah,
that's the one that has the man's face on the dog, right?
Yeah, that's the 70s one. As far as
that one's terrifying. And there's another Sutherland movie that I think is fucking so good, and I'm gonna botch the name. It's Don't Something. I know the trailer was parodied in Grindhouse with Simon Pegg's Don't. I'm gonna have to look at it real quick. But it's called Don't Something.
Don't Look Now.
Thank you. Don't Look Now. Yeah. And it's Donald Sutherland and his wife lose their daughter in a drowning accident, and they go to Venice for him to restart their lives. And he keeps seeing his daughter, he keeps seeing his daughter like in the streets.
Yeah,
and it is so scary. And it's one of those movies where nothing happens until the end. It is such a slow, piece of life burn where you're just watching this guy question his everyday life, and then the end is terrifying.
But is it in the way where you're like, oh, that's a great movie because of how good the end is, and even though it was a very slow up until that point? No,
it's a very overall. It's shot beautifully, and it's really artsy fartsy. There's a very long sex scene in it that if it's not real, it's somehow one of the best shot sex scenes ever. And it's just full dog. I mean, talk about a guy who loves to show his butt.
Sutherland,
between that and Animal House, man.
Yeah.
That guy was a full ass man.
Well, also a full ass man, Jeff. We're sort of just talking about, good horror movies. What's one that really stands out for you, Jeff? I know that, you're not somebody that I think is like, oh, you like this genre, that genre. It's usually like, in the old days when there weren't potential, viruses on every surface that you went to in public. If a movie came out, you're like, oh yeah, I saw that already. You would see pretty much everything that came out, right?
Yeah, well, I think part of that was just I loved the theater experience, right? And that's the thing I missed the most, even with getting to watch some of these new blockbusters at home. It's great, but it's I went because that was my time to decompress. Nobody can call you, nobody can bother you. You get to enjoy your popcorn. You're in your nice little dark voyeur town, and everybody else has to leave you alone. Because I like to go to the movies by myself. It's a very do my own thing kind of experience. So that's why I went to everything. But I don't think I'm a horror fan like Will or a lot of people where it's they want to watch every horror movie and all these things. I think I loved horror when it was more psychological. I always enjoy a horror movie that's probably older or an homage to an older one, right? Versus now it just seems like it's a lot of the gore porn, right? Here's some titties and now they're chopped off. And it's oh, okay. and here's the meat underneath, and it's oh, all right, and some more of that. So it's I don't enjoy those as much, which is I liked the first Saw, and then it was watched a couple of subsequent ones, and then just hit the point where I was okay, you're just showing me people's guts ripped out. It's not scary, it's just gross. So I think my favorite horror movie or something in the horror genre that I can think of that I enjoyed recently was the Shining sequel, Dr.
Sleep.
Dr. Sleep.
Yeah.
Just because it was that scene where they're eating the little boy is fucking horrifying. That the kid who was in Room with Brie Larson plays this like little kid. He basically gets eaten by this group of people who are like sucking his soul out, and it's like he did a really good job acting it, because it's like, oh my god, it's just like just creeps you out. Stuff like that always gets me. Or like you mentioned The Conjuring. Those movies get me, but only in the way where it's like, because I'm such a night owl, like 3 a.m. will come up and I'm like, oh no, the witching hour, and I'll like get in bed versus like being out. I'm like, I don't want to mess with that shit.
Yeah, if you were watching it, like, we can, for those that are watching, you've got some bright Massachusetts sunshine hitting the out there, so you wouldn't be scared by a movie like that right now, because you're safe, and also your mommy might be in the house, so obviously you're not going to be scared.
I feel like I miss the old days, like when I would watch like the original Scream, and then it was like with my sisters, and then it's like, oh no, I don't want to like walk through the house at all, because what if a murderer's there to stab me? But it's like you hit a point where you're just like, that's not going to happen. Or if it is, that's like a totally different problem I have.
Well, Scream's a good example, Zach, because it's the horror is good in it, but it is legitimately funny. I think a lot of times trying to be funny and also make a good horror movie, you're going to have it so that the funny's not that funny and then the horror isn't that good either. I mean, obviously it's a huge, big budget movie. It's Wes Craven. I mean, but I'm going to assume that there are probably, you could do an entire podcast that is just those movies that try to blend those unsuccessfully, right?
Yeah, it's always too much of one, and the other falls flat. I think it's very difficult to, like, as far as like ones that are too much comedy. There's a Joe Piscopo zombie movie called Dead Heat.
Oh boy,
where he's a cop, and then usually Scream is perfect. I think if we have to go through time, and especially as far as slashers, the grandfather, the father, son, Holy Ghost, whatever you're gonna do, is Psycho, Halloween, Scream.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it.
Especially because they have the through line of a character named Loomis.
That's a great point.
And I think those are like the defining movies for what would become the next 10 years of those movies, to 15 to even 20 years.
Yeah, and I think that the key that you have there is obviously you have, some of the greatest filmmakers of the 20th century. I mean, my wife actually legitimately hates horror movies just because she gets scared. She doesn't like it. But I convinced her one Halloween at the Hollywood Forever Cemetery here in LA. They show movies, and one year on Halloween they showed the original Halloween. So I got her to go with us and with me and some friends. And I think that when you see that and you're like, all right, there's some jump scares and stuff. It's not Hostel. It's not Saw. It's not that level, but you can really appreciate like, oh, it kind of all comes back to this movie, and it's like, is a kid going to see that and be scared now? Probably. But like an adult might be like, oh, I've seen so much worse than this. But that's probably like the one slasher movie my wife will ever see is that one. But I think there's so much more to it, and that's why I think it's a great one to highlight, though. The first Halloween and not the multiple reboots and sequels. What were you going to say, Jeff?
I was just thinking like more recent movie that's I think considered in the horror genre, but I never really considered scary, just more of like that thinker, was like Get Out. Right. And I was thinking of that because I also watched a movie recently that was basically the original Get Out, Skeleton Key. And I was just like, I remember finishing it. Have you seen it? It's from like 2005. It's got like Kate Hudson. And so it's basically it's Get Out in the sense that people are inhabiting other people's bodies, but it's like these two people that did voodoo and they're trying to like trick this girl so they can take over her soul or some shit like that. And it was like, it wasn't scary to me, just like Get Out wasn't scary, but it's more unsettling. Like I'd finish a movie like that and be like, okay, I feel like I enjoy it more than I did like Hostel 2. Where it was just like, here's an eyeball getting stabbed.
Yeah. For me, what scares me now as an adult, if it's a good home invasion movie, really gets me. And the one, The Strangers, and then especially, I don't know if have you guys ever heard of Funny Games?
Yeah, I remember seeing a trailer for it.
So Funny Games came out in Germany, and then the director remade it here in America, shot for shot, with Tim Roth and Naomi Watts.
Oh, wow.
And it's the exact same. I mean, down to he edited exactly the same, and both versions are excellent. And it's one of those, like, this is not without of the realm of possibility. Like, you could just be in the wrong house on the wrong day. To me, that's what, like, as a grown-up, really scares me.
Well, yeah, and I mean, when you read up on the the Manson murders, not the Sharon Tate one, but the other one was the wrong house, and like literally, the most famous murder spree in history is like, oh yeah, that is literally the wrong place at the wrong time because everybody's in the wrong place. Jeff, were you going to say something about that movie?
Which one?
Funny Games.
Funny. Oh, I've seen it too. I loved Funny Games. I watched it back in college forever ago. Michael Pitts, who was also in like Numbers or something with Sandra Bullock, is in that. He was always a good, like, creepy villain guy because he's got that kind of, like, you just seems weird always.
Yeah, I think they had him on the Hannibal Lecter TV series. I think they had him play the character Mason Verger originally, and then they recast it at some point. But yeah, he's somebody that when you see him, he's usually like great. He sort of had. I was a terrible actor in high school and college, but you can still kind of know it when you see it. You felt like, oh, this is a kid who could be, when he was younger, this is a kid who could be getting like DiCaprio level roles, but maybe he just wasn't interested, but I think that, yeah, I mean, these are, that's funny because that's one that I actually meant to see. I hadn't thought about it in a while, but I remember doing a push. Is there a movie, Zach, that comes to mind that, was a mainstream movie and could have, it's one of those like, oh, why was this movie not bigger? Some of these more obscure movies, obviously there's so many reasons why they're not that bigger, but was there a big budget, whether it's horror or otherwise, that you saw and you're like, how does everybody not love this movie?
Event Horizon.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I remember that.
Event Horizon is essentially The Shining in space plus Hellraiser elements. I know it was heavily edited, and it basically just came out against it. It replaced Titanic when Titanic went over schedule, so they rushed Event Horizon instead, so that they would have like a tentpole movie. But even, and I know like they took a ton of gore out of it. But everybody in it is really good. It's Grant from Jurassic Park, Forrest Whitaker, I think, and it's proof that space movie, like certain what you would call like like something like Alien or this movie, they're haunted house movies in space.
Yeah, and I mean,
but format-wise, Alien is a haunted house movie. It just happens that house is a spaceship.
Yeah.
And Event Horizon exactly right. is the perfect version of that. And I think it's scary as hell. And the effects are dated now. Like, the CGI doesn't look great. But if you can suspend your disbelief, I think it's a really good movie that did not get the accolades it deserved because of when it came out. And then if you're talking about a movie that's a hilariously funny movie that got really effed in the A with scheduling. Weird Al's UHF.
I agree. Yeah. That
came out the same weekend as Batman.
Yeah.
And immediately was taken out of theaters. And it's such a funny movie.
And that's a movie that I think, once it was out on VHS, it had the cult status because it was like, I don't even know if I had a chance to see it in the theater. Like, I didn't have a movie theater in my town. I had to drive like a half an hour away. And I think if you did, sometimes a movie like that, if you didn't see it that first weekend, you're like, well, you're not seeing it now.
Yeah.
Because Batman was on 4 screens,
it came out against Batman. I'm sure nobody saw it when it came out, and they went, well, I guess nobody's going to see this, and it's gone. But that is such a funny movie that I don't think gets put in like the echelon. As far as modern funny, Walk Hard is the funniest movie of the last 20 years, without a shadow of a doubt to me.
Yeah. What were you going to say, Jeff, before? Or was it?
When you were talking about Event Horizon, there's a Danny Boyle film that's kind of like an updated version called Sunshine, I think. I don't know if you've seen that one. I like that too.
I haven't. I'll definitely check it out. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, Danny Boyle is one of those guys that I'm just not a huge fan of zombies in general, but 28 Days Later, I see movies because he makes them, and like when you go back to his first movie, Shallow Grave, the movie that I always tell people to see is that one, because I'm like I'll tell nerds, I'm like, look, Doctor Who and Obi-Wan Kenobi are roommates in this movie. How are you not watching this? But it's so good, and I think that, he's definitely I think he's got something coming soon. He's always a guy that you wish he could make like 2 movies a year, but then they probably wouldn't be good. Zach, I don't want to keep you too much longer, but I do want to talk about comedy. And, you and I were talking before we got started that I was reading an interview with you, and it mentioned how, you started just doing impressions of comedians. And one of the comedians you mentioned was Kevin Meaney. And my brother and I used to just go around like for months. We drove my parents crazy. We would say, that's not right. And we're big pants people, just the way that he did. And I think they had to sit us down and be like, you have to stop. But so you were a big Kevin Meaney fan.
I loved it. It was started, right? Whatever made my parents laugh. I think I always wanted to be that. And it was Chris Farley, not just the Chippendale sketch, but Chris Farley as Giuliani's son during the inauguration. I remember my parents couldn't stop laughing at. And then it's Kevin Meaney and John Panette. So John Panette, the "You go home now, you eat here 4 hour," and then Kevin Meaney, it was the "I tried phone sex, I got my penis stuck in the 9." And from the time I'm 5 years old till now at 33, I will be walking around the house going, "Penis stuck in the 9. That's not right."
Yeah, it's funny. The Chris Farley was so great for those, because I remember it was like the same year. I think he does obviously he does the I think that's Andrew Giuliani's son, who's like is in the news now, and all you can ever think of is Farley. Like, I can't take that guy. I mean, I can't take that guy seriously for a few reasons, but I'm like, yeah, but I remember that. But then he would be like, there's a sketch where it's like all when the Philadelphia Phillies were in the World Series against the Blue Jays, and they're all just like spitting so much tobacco, and he's just this big John Kruk, and I don't even know if he has any lines in it. It was just if Farley was on the screen, you're like, oh, this is great, and there's not that many of those guys, I
want to know one more Kevin Meaney thing. If people haven't seen it, Kevin Meaney did it on one of the late shows. He did all of We Are the World. He lip synced it, but he had like sunglasses and kerchiefs and this, and it's hidden in his suit, and he does an impression of every single person in We Are the World, and it's so funny. And it's lip syncing. It should be terrible hack comedy, but the faces and the mannerisms, it's so insanely funny.
Yeah, and when we were talking about Kevin Meaney just in the couple minutes before we got started, he was somebody who was always so funny. You didn't see him in a lot of movies, and I mean, I do remember sort of what could have been a breakout role for him is he had the TV version of Uncle Buck. He replaced John Candy in that, and I guess though that's always tough if you're going to replace anybody from a movie, but especially replacing John Candy. What do you think it is about it? Was he just one of those guys that was like stand up first? And maybe he didn't try and find that right niche like somebody like Jerry Seinfeld did?
I think he's just one of those guys that's a road dog they're going to murder everywhere they go. Also, like, I think for somebody like that part needs to be written for them.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because he's such a big personality. You're not going to shoehorn him into a role written or meant for anybody else. Same with like Panette did a few movies, but he didn't really get to be John Panette in them.
Yeah. And you were telling me that, Panette, you said that, I think you said Jim Norton, people were impressed by how he would do so well. And he was a clean comic, and
yeah, you talk about gluten for 20 minutes and you're dying. But I was talking to you, he's got this one special, I think it's Around the World in 80 Buffets. And the whole album's clean. And then he talks about there was like a big meat recall, I think at Burger King, and then it wound up being like they recalled meat like nationwide, like stakes were called, and he does this. And once again, the album's been clean for 40 minutes.
Yeah,
and he goes, I have one question: who fucked up the meat? And it's one of those you could hear the boom, like it's like somebody lit a match in a room full of gas at the club, and you just hear. Like the whole crowd, after listening to this guy be clean for 40 minutes, he goes, "Who fucked up the meat? I'm gonna kick the shit out of him," and people just go wild.
Yeah, I think that's really the key. Is like, look, there's there obviously swearing can be very funny, and I mentioned that we all used to work with Dennis Miller, and he told us the story one time that Buddy Hackett went to see him, and he went backstage afterwards, and Buddy Hackett of all people says, "Yeah, but why do you got to dip into the blue ink? As in, like, why do you have to swear so?" And this was Buddy Hackett, and it was like, so like what, I mean, when you're a lot of the comedians of that era, it's like, yeah, you're going to swear because we're on cable and you finally could. But I guess that you still have sort of that old guard, I mean, God, we don't need to talk about Bill Cosby's private life, but there's, he like called Eddie Murphy and wanted to know why he felt like he needed to swear so much. But it's like, yeah, but it works for those comics. And when you're sort of, discovering what you like about comedy, talk about what you gravitated towards and how that kind of informed what your act would be once you got started.
Growing up, I always loved comedy, always loved stand-up. It was always on. And then I found Opie and Anthony, probably when I was like 13, 14 years old, when they were on 102.7. And they would have Jim Norton, Rich Voss, Patrice O'Neill, Dave Attell, all these guys on. And that's where I found like that New York, what would be kind of deemed cringe humor. And that really informed me. Those are the guys that I absolutely loved, as far as like being really dirty. And what I never get when people like criticize dirty comedy as opposed to something else, it's like, it's just another genre. It's like telling somebody you can't make a horror movie, or telling, a death metal band, why can't you turn down the distortion? Not everybody likes that. It's just a different genre. It's like I make comedy for the people that I connect with, and I do stuff that makes me laugh. But yeah, I definitely was informed by like, I love dirty stuff. And then there's people you wouldn't expect to be my influences, namely like Dana Gould, and my other big one is Bobcat Goldthwait. A lot of his storytelling, I find myself having to not mimic. And people thought I was doing Gilbert for a long time until I said Bobcat, and then went, oh yeah, that's obviously very much informing what you do.
Yeah, no, and Bobcat was so great as a stand-up. I mean, obviously people really got to know him in movies, but I mean, I remember, he had obviously HBO specials, and he would do comic relief, and it's just that sort of that manic, that delivery. But and it's like, did he just do 6 minutes talking about Tab, the diet soda? And you're like, yeah, he sure did, and
by the way, a crazy person, a legitimate. He's told this story before. And I don't want to butcher it, so I'll tell a very short version. And it's his story, but he toured with Nirvana.
Wow.
And it was specifically because I think Kurt, at that point, hated his fans. So he would send Bobcat to just go bomb for 20 minutes before Nirvana would go on. Wow. And they're in Chicago the week Jordan's retiring. So it's a big stadium. Everybody's got banners. We'll miss you, Michael. They've got his number on signs. Why they have that at a Nirvana concert, I don't know. But, like all of Chicago is like celebrating the life and career of Michael Jordan. Bobcat goes on stage and opens with, well, for $40 million, I shoot my own dad in the fucking head. And security had to put a blanket around him, put him on their shoulders, put him in a van, and drive him out of state lines because there were people waiting outside the venue to kill him.
Oh, Jesus. I mean, like there's getting the strongly worded letter. There's the angry tweets. And then there's you almost got murdered for telling one joke. Wow, that's amazing. That I kind of remember this idea of Bobcat opening for Nirvana, because I think Howard Stern told him it was a bad idea and he shouldn't do it. I've talked to Don Jameson. He's got a show on Anthony Cumilla's Compound Media, and he goes on tour with he'll do like some of the 80s, 90s hard rock bands. Like he'll go on tour with like a Faster Pussycat, but he's gone on tour with like death metal. And I know Jim Brewer would open for Metallica. Have you done comedy with bands often, or how does that work?
By and large, doing that sucks. You have to be really, really good, or really, really, really pander. The only good experience I've had with that is I did a heavy metal cruise called Shiprocked, and it was all like early 2000s era metal. And I wasn't opening for the bands. They just had a comedy room at midnight. And that was really fun because everyone was there to go hard. And those were some of the best shows I've ever done. But as far as opening for a band, like, you really can't do material unless it's about metal or you're doing crowd work or whatever. Probably the worst bomb of my life. I was doing a show. I was doing a spot in between bands at kind of a goth night, kind of like a metal thing. There was a bunch of people there that thought they were vampires. And I was supposed to go on at 10. They brought me on at 2 a.m.
Wow.
And the lady goes, all right, I'm about to bring you on. And she goes on stage and she goes, all right, guys, we got a few more acts for you. Before I bring your next act on the stage, any girl, if it was your birthday this month, come up on stage. All the birthday girls, like 8 random girls, get up on the stage. She goes, all right, since it's your birthday month, we're going to have a spanking contest, and we're going to spank each of you for however many years old you are. And they've got each girl bent over, and they're spanking them with a paddle, and they're spanking each girl. Now all the girls are spanking each other, and the whole crowd's going nuts. And she goes, all right, guys, do you want to see more spanking or a comedian? And they go, spanking. And she goes, ladies and gentlemen, Zac Amico.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
And then they hand me one of those like LL Cool J Mama Said Knock You Out microphones.
Yeah.
That goes over my face. So they just went from 8 girls spanking each other's bare asses to a fat guy with a microphone head yelling at them. And I lasted about 20 seconds before the booze started to get overpowering.
Yeah.
And then they started to come to the stage. And then I said, I have the microphone. You have to listen to me. And then the sound man turned my microphone off. And I threw it. And I went, there was no green room.
Right.
So I had to jump off the stage through the sea of people as they chased me out into the subway.
So it's not that dissimilar than Bobcat Goldthwait.
Yeah.
Coming on before.
And then the lady DM'd me that night at 5 a.m. Why didn't you come to me for your $20?
I'm surprised that story doesn't end with her saying like, "Hey, now you owe me $20." That's
she had
crazy.
the balls to blame me for that.
Yeah.
I was told that my comedy stylings did not match the mood of her event.
Well, I mean, especially when the option is, there's a lot of comedians that I might decide like, you know what, I could see Dave Chappelle, I could see Andrew Dice Clay in his prime, or you could watch these girls get spanked in the ass a little bit longer. I think that depending on the night, it might be a tough choice for sure.
Yeah, as a comedian, you get these introductions, but that was my worst introduction. Right behind one time I was going on stage, and the stage was maybe 2 inches off the ground, and to get to the bar, you had to walk directly in front of me. Yeah. And they went, all right, we're going to bring your next act to the stage, but just so you guys know, for the next 10 minutes, we're doing dollar shots. Ladies and gentlemen, Zac Amico.
Dollar shots.
And I had to stand there and do comedy to no one, as there was a line in front of me to go to the bar.
To get the dollar shots. What were you going to say, Jeff?
I was going to say, it seemed like your only option was to just come out and offer to jerk off for them.
You might have gotten $40 that way.
That's my closer.
Yeah, that's right. You can't do that. You can't start because where are you going to go from there?
Yeah.
So, Zach, your shows, the Midnight Spook Show and Bye Guys with Ian Fidance, those are on Gas Digital, and that is the brainchild of Luis J. Gomez, and he's obviously people who know the New York comedy scene that you referenced. They're going to know Luis. I mean, obviously people know him all around the country, around the world, but I think he's very well known in those circles because he's just out there so much. Talk about how supportive he's been to you in your career and just getting the opportunity to, be on his network.
Oh yeah. I mean, Luis pretty much handpicked me out of open mic obscurity. I was a doorman at a club that he worked. We became friends. We started doing Real Ass Podcast together 6-7 years ago now. That's who I tour with. That's who I feature for on the road. And when he created Gas Digital Network, Real Ass Podcast was one, I think, the first 4 shows on the network. I've been good friends with him almost as long as I've been in comedy, period. He started the Roast Masters, which was the New York side of LA's Roast Battle. And that got me my first big TV credit. He's been instrumental in not just my career, but probably dozens, if not hundreds of other young comics from all over the country.
Yeah. And it seems like he's always very supportive and, definitely never afraid to, air. I think that's probably sort of what you're talking about the comedians that you like listening to on Opie and Anthony. What was always great was if guys didn't like each other, you kind of knew it. And there's the playful, joking around. But Luis always seems like he's in an actual fight with someone. And some people are not going to bring that to the microphone, but it's always entertaining. And it's almost never anything big, from what I hear anyway.
No, it's always a fight over minutia. We call Luis the Puerto Rican Larry David. Because he's constantly in a giant fight with somebody that started over absolutely nothing.
Yeah. Well, how is look, here in Los Angeles, comedy is still the parking lot variety, the occasional pop-up shows, but from what I'm hearing, there's a lot more shows in New York, indoor shows. I know there's still the outdoor ones. Where's it at right now as we're talking on May 17th? Do you feel like it's at least approaching normal where it's like, oh yeah, you can go out and do a bunch of spots? Aaron Berg had this great documentary where I think he did 25 or 26, 25 spots in a night. So obviously I don't think you're quite at that point where you could try and do 25 spots in a night. But I feel like from what I hear from, people that I hear promoting their gigs, that comedy is back to some extent in New York, at least much more than it is here in Los Angeles.
Yeah, the clubs are open at half capacity with the tables far apart from each other. We've been doing the road. Some places have plastic barriers up in between the tables, but there are still outdoor shows going on. Soul Joel's is doing outdoor stuff with these huge field shows in Pennsylvania. But yeah, the clubs are starting to open back up, but the only thing is there's not those spots anymore because a bunch of clubs did close.
Yeah.
Or I know Caroline still hasn't reopened because they said that they couldn't turn a profit at the half capacity because of what a big space that is and what it costs to run a building like that.
Yeah, I mean, and Caroline's being, right over there by Rockefeller Center. I don't understand how any of these places can afford to not be open and pay their rent or not pay their rent or how any of that works. But look, it's great to hear. I took my kids to Disneyland yesterday and it's at 25% capacity. It's kind of great, especially towards the end of the night when all the really little kids, have all passed out and gone home. It's sort of like an eerie feeling, and it's great. I mean, I've gotten my 2 Pfizer shots, so for more than a month I've been up for whatever, and I think that California, I'm surprised you're hearing things like, oh yeah, there's going to be I have tickets to this show to see Weezer and Green Day that I expected to get pushed to another year from last year. And they're like, no, we're going to do it in September. I'm like, at Dodger Stadium, really? You're going to have 55,000 people. And things are, and I don't know if it's if it's real, it's if you hear big size events, But I mean, going to Disneyland, it's going to be at like 50% within a couple weeks. And do you feel that in New York, things are really heading in that direction too there, Zach?
I mean, it's coming back. It's the there was a sweet spot for a while, right when indoor stuff started again, and there's still inklings of it, where the crowds are just so excited to be inside doing something that the crowds were awesome. No matter where you went, everyone was so excited to just be inside with a beer, eating food. Now the crowds are starting to get back to New York, where they're like, all right, make me laugh, you son of a bitch.
Well, now, and it's like do you have like the table of like the bachelorette party again, like that sort of a thing where they're like,
I haven't seen that yet, but
okay.
I don't think people are, because I don't think you can have tables that big yet.
Oh, makes sense. Yeah. And sorry. And Jeff, you always pre-pandemic, you kind of hated people anyway. So you're kind of content to just sort of keep on, do you think that you might live a pandemic lifestyle for the next 5-10 years?
Hard to say. I don't know.
Yeah.
I tried to go to the eye doctor today and I almost lost my shit. So we'll see.
That's fair.
Maybe.
Okay.
Not changing. The world better do it.
Yeah. But, I think that for some people, look, there's some people that are like, oh, look, when the new Fast and Furious movie comes out, that's when I'm going to go back to the movie theater. And like, oh, I'll go to this concert, that concert. But right now, like, there's nothing enticing you, Jeff DeRay, to be like, yeah, this is what I really need. Or you're just like, I'll find something new on HBO Max. I'll be fine.
Honestly, the thing I'm looking forward to most once I get my second shot next week is going to the Boston Museum of Science. I have not gotten to go since I moved back home, and that was always one of my favorite places to go and visit. So I'm just like looking forward to feeling safe to get back out there. Pretty sure I'm going to be trying to get out there. Whether I'll want to talk to anybody is a whole different question. But I will one day leave the basement.
But it's so great to be out in public and not want to talk to people, Zach. I mean, the invention of the earbud in terms of like not even the technology, like the fact that you can just put them in and like you don't even have to be listening to anything. You can be as rude as you want. You can ignore everyone. I think that we're in the golden age for malcontents of people who don't want to interact with the general public.
Oh, it's the true secret to living in New York City is to never take your headphones out.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's working in New York for a few years before I moved to Los Angeles. That's when I learned that move with like your hands in your jacket pocket. If anybody tries to hand you anything, no matter what it is, you don't acknowledge it because, it's going to lead to a conversation at best. The guys trying to give you their CDs, which I don't even know. Are they trying to just like give you like download codes now? But they used to follow you around with like the backpack full of CDs. So it's well, I don't know. It's I guess that's a sign. That's when everything's back is when the self-made CDs are being handed out.
As someone who made their living selling comedy club tickets on the street for 4 years. Yes, that will be and I don't know when that's coming back. That is a very hard living, but that's how I started in comedy. I was a doorman and I slung tickets. So, and that was actually what Lewis trained me. Cause that was Lewis's original business in comedy was he promoted shows. And so he kind of opened that door for me. And, I don't know if that's ever coming back.
Yeah, no. I would do a comedy night. This is in 2000, like once a month. This woman named Gladys had a comedy room at the back of a place called Hamburger Harry's, and they were always bringer shows. So it's like if you want a stage time, you needed to convince at least 4 people that they needed to go in. So all stuff that I guess signs of the times is
But I will say, Jeff. The last movie I saw in theaters was Cats, and I don't know if I need to ever go to the movies again.
I think the last thing I did go to one movie when I first moved back to Massachusetts because I was like, there's less people around here. It's probably okay. And then it was like I got in the theater and I was like, nope, never coming back. But I can't remember. It was some awful movie that I was like, well, this was a waste of time.
But didn't you tell me that they were doing something in Massachusetts in particular, Jeff, that they weren't selling concessions? So
yeah,
like
they always had the concessions closed, to my knowledge.
So
like,
then what was the
closed.
point? Like to go to a movie and not get to have popcorn? You know, Zach, one of the last movies I saw was also Cats, but 5 minutes in, I turned to my friend and I said, we have to come back and see this again. I need to really be able to, to just sort of appreciate. Did you see it before the effects were rendered? Because I remember seeing Dame Judi Dench with like, human
the wedding
hands.
ring.
Yeah.
Yes, I did. I saw it the week it came out, and it was unfinished. They had people hands. Judi Dench had her fucking wedding ring on. It was so weird. It was unsettling. And then, I may have been on drugs.
Fair.
As that was the big plan. And they started to kick. And then Rebel Wilson took her skin off.
Oh, yeah.
And had another cat skin underneath it. And then there was a parade. And this sounds silly. There was a parade of dancing cockroaches with children's faces that she then begins to eat.
Is the best part is that it was animated like a 1990s MTV music video. Like,
yeah, it looked like Joe's apartment.
Yeah. So this sounds like not the best movie to see on drugs. And
it was the best. I mean, I can't imagine sitting through it not.
Yeah. Well, it
just never ended. Every single time you thought the movie was over, it was like, here's 3 more songs. Like, it was I remember, and I very rarely like audibly emote during a theater. If I'm in the theater, I try to be pretty polite, but more than 2/3 of the theater I saw it with walked out. And everyone else was kind of seeing if they could muscle through it. Yeah. And there was a point where I thought a song was over, and then it kicked back in for like another verse. And I think I actually went, Jesus Christ, really? Like I was yelling at the movie.
Oh yeah, it was a rowdy crowd that I went. It was just at the AMC in Burbank, and I think a few people. There's a bar attached to that, and I think a few people had visited beforehand. Some were classy, like my friends and I, and we brought our own little airplane bottles. Yeah. And it was the environment. Like I would never do this in a real movie, but after one of the songs, it was so bad. I mean, it was Taylor Swift's song. And I stood up and applauded just because I just couldn't believe what I had just seen, and usually that would be so obnoxious, but oh God, I forgot how bad that Cats movie was. Yeah, maybe you've convinced me now. Maybe theater going is not all it's cracked up to be. This led me to one other topic I'll throw in. Jeff, what do you think is the best movie while high? And, whether it's mushrooms or, edibles or anything.
That I was thinking one of the few times where it's like I've done drugs, and I ate an eighth of shrooms and then watched The Fountain. And I got to tell you, it was awesome. Like that is a movie to watch when you are tripping.
I don't even know what that is. What is? I know what The Fountainhead is, but I don't know what The Fountain is.
It's an Aronofsky film.
Oh, okay.
With Hugh Jackman and Rachel Weisz, and it's like 3 different time periods, and it's essentially like the Tree of Life or like some kind of thing like that. So there's like back in Spanish conquistador days, and then current day times, and then the future where Hugh Jackman is bald and flying through space with a tree. It's a total trip. It's like a fun, interesting movie, but like when you're tripping and then like all the lights and everything are just like going crazy, you're like, oh, okay. I ate the shrooms. I was watching it with my girlfriend, Natasha, and I didn't tell her. And then I just like leaned in halfway through because I was like, I can't handle this on my own. I was like, I got to tell you something. I got a confession. Like I'm tripping right now. And she was like, what are you doing? Because of course I forgot we had a dinner after the movie. So it was just like an ongoing adventure for me.
Zach, what would you think is one of the ultimate movies while high, and what would be your recommendation for what to the pairing, sort of the wine pairing?
It sounds cliche, but if you're gonna do a lot of edibles or mushrooms, to watch Wizard of Oz with Dark Side of the Moon, it's so cliche, but it's so good.
No, when she opens the door and goes into Oz and all the fucking clocks go off at that second, it's like it's like even if I think even if you were just watching it, stone sober, you'd be like, oh, wow, that's really cool. But it's like, no, you don't understand. This is so fucking crazy. Yeah, I agree with that, by the way.
And then as far as my favorite movie mushroom experience, actually, my best friend and I did mushrooms and watched Nightmare on Elm Street 5, 4, and 3 in that order.
Wow.
Because they get better.
Yeah.
But the effects start sillier. And there's something about that like Screaming Mad George era of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies where they're like the like garbage pail kids looking effects.
Yeah.
That translates so well for mushrooms. That's probably the most fun I've ever had.
Which one does he put his tongue out the phone into the girl's ear? I can't even remember. That's one. Wow. Okay.
I think so.
Yeah, no, I think you're probably right. I think a lot of people didn't like it, but I thought that the Jackie Earl Haley remake, I actually was like excited for more of those, but I guess I was the only one. I mean, he's not Robert Englund, but who is? I don't know. I liked that take on the character, but I
thought they added too much. Because like, didn't they make him a molester?
Yeah,
on top of being a killer, which like was kind of always inferred. I don't know if it needed to be.
That's a great point. Yeah,
out like that.
Don't hit us over the head with it. Yeah.
What I really there's a cut scene from the original that infers that Nancy had an older brother.
Oh.
And he was one of Freddy's victims. And the kids that Freddy's killing all had older siblings that they didn't remember.
Oh, wow.
Because that was his crop of victims. And I recently saw, I can't remember if I saw either a deleted scene or I just read, the cut scene from the script, but it makes the whole movie scarier.
Well, that's what I was thinking as you said that. I'm like, that adds this whole level to it, that they all have these older brothers that they don't, or older siblings that they don't remember. And I mean, I think that's, I don't know, that's definitely a great one. And yeah, I guess you're right. I think I like the character of Freddy so much. Like when I was little, I always liked Spider-Man because he would make jokes and quips and stuff. And I thought that's what I liked about Freddy, was that he's going to kill you, but he's going to make us laugh while he does it, and I always loved that combination. And I think that as long as Robert Englund was able to play him, it was great. But then the idea that we don't have new Freddy content, maybe we don't need it, but I would love for there to be more of Freddy Krueger out there. But I guess at the moment, that's not what's happening. Anyway, Zac, you've been so generous with your time. I do want to take one more moment to mention the fact that our friend Matt and KC donated to the fundraiser, the GoFundMe for Lou Bruno. And if anybody, whether you've enjoyed this or not, or you just want to help out your fellow man, you can just find it. You can find it. I'm sure, Zac, if people follow you at Zac is not funny, they'll be able to.
Yeah, if you go on my Instagram, the link will be right in my bio. And thank you. That's very, very sweet. And thank you for having me, guys. Can I actually plug? I got a new movie coming out.
Sure, absolutely.
I've got a new movie coming out called #Shakespeare's Shitstorm. I made it with the Trauma team. I did some writing on it as well as the associate director. It is our version of Shakespeare's The Tempest. It is a spiritual sequel to 1996's Romeo and Juliet. I'm very, very proud of it. I think it's really funny. It's going to be coming out in various theaters and festivals throughout the summer into the fall. Our first big screening being the Mahoning Drive-In Theater in Pennsylvania. It's a huge, huge, huge drive-in. We sold it out last year, I think, with 200 some odd cars. But it's really fun. They have like big merch stands. They have food there. You can camp there. And we're going to be doing 2 days straight for the Trauma Dance Film Festival. And that is June the 11th and 12th at the Mahoning Drive-In in Layton, Pennsylvania. And we're going to be showing 6 movies and a bunch of shorts. And on that Saturday the 12th, the first movie, once again, is #Shakespeare's Shitstorm, which I'm the most proud I've ever been of a movie I've worked on.
Right. And for the people who, are a little bit more casual when it comes to horror movies, Trauma, obviously responsible for Toxic Avenger and so much more. I know you you worked on a couple of Nukem High follow-ups, and, you're talking about the drive-in. That's sort of for the last year and a half. That was really the way that I could see movies. And I grew up with a drive-in, like probably 20 minutes from my house, and it's still open to this day. The Warwick Drive-in in Warwick, New York. It's still there. And there's just something great about just being in your car, especially when you're, maybe you don't like to be around people. I mean, sitting in the movie theater can be very annoying. Jeff, you were talking about going and wanting to, not have anybody bother you on your phone. But how many times do you go and there's people on your phone talking to each other, whatever. So the drive-in is such a great way to do it. And a big one like that sounds really exciting. And
it's fun because you have the option of, people camp there, so they'll set up tents and watch the movie. They'll watch the movie from their car, or some people, if you are comfortable and have a group of friends, people bring chairs and kind of make like a little semicircle and keep the speaker in the middle of them. So there's just a ton of different ways to enjoy the movie depending on your comfort level. If you still are nervous about COVID, these drive-ins are the best. And once again, Trauma Dance, it's so much fun. It's just super, super fans. Everybody camps out and has a great time. I couldn't recommend it enough.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, Lloyd Kaufman from Trauma is quite a character. Anybody who's ever seen interviews with him. So that sounds like a fun event. And then you can find everything. Zac is Not Funny, Twitter, Instagram, everywhere like that. Again, Zac Amico, we appreciate it. The shows, if we've talked a lot about some of the movies on it, Midnight Spook Show and Bye Guys with Ian Fidance, all on Gas Digital. So you can find it all there. Thanks again, Zac Amico. I really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you guys so much for having me. Everybody have a great day. All right.
All right, you too.
Thank you.
Thanks. All right, and Jeff, you're doing all right there. Looks beautiful and sunny. I was going to comment on it before I mentioned it in passing, but so you're one shot in and you're getting a second one. That's so that was the takeaway from there. Obviously, you had a great chat with Zach. And are you doing Pfizer, Moderna? What are you getting?
I think I got the Moderna. I'm not sure.
Well, that's the one where you might have like some cold sweats for a day or two or something, but it's the end result is the same. It's within like a few days. Although I guess you're supposed to wait like 2 weeks. After 2 weeks after you get the shot, then you can go back out there. And it was weird because like there was a point where like getting a shot, especially if you got it like what some people consider early, it was like, because my wife and I didn't post that we were getting it at first, because we're just like, oh, I don't know. I don't want anybody to be like, well, why are you getting one? It was just, I don't know. I mean, you're not a social media guy. And I think we should all follow your lead and not. But, I just overthink these things, and I'm like, I don't I didn't post when my kids went back to school in August because I'm like, I just don't want the headache, But I think that now that we're in mid-May and, I was telling Zach, like, there's like, there's stadium shows that are going to happen. There's like sporting events. Like I went to a Dodger game a few weeks ago, but this was great. Because it was 20 or 25% capacity. So the row in front of us was all zip tied off. The row behind us was zip tied off. There was my party, 4 people. And there were a bunch of seats zip tied in between us, and then the other party down at the end. And I was like, can we just leave the stadiums like this? Because it was so pleasant. Because I didn't have to get up for anybody. There weren't people in my way while I was trying to watch. I'm like, can we live in a 25% capacity world? Do you think it would be easier to get back out into a world where there were just maybe Thanos didn't have the wrong idea. Can we? He just was too conservative. Instead of getting rid of half of the people, can we get rid of 75% of the people?
Yeah, I don't know. I've been trying to be more like trying to be more optimistic about people. But It was like I mentioned today. So it's like a couple things. First, I'd say I remember the movie I went to see. It was New Mutants, which I'm sure you'll appreciate. That was the last movie I think I saw in theaters.
Yeah, I can. By the way, I can see that turning you off of movie theaters for the rest of your life. I don't hate that movie, but I know it's not
a bad movie. It's just not. It wasn't one where I was like, oh, I needed to see it in the theater.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I've been trying to be optimistic, but it's like so. Literally today, it's like one of those. I haven't really done anything in a long time. Finally, set up this appointment to go get my contacts and new glasses. And I show up and the lady's just like, you don't have your contacts in? I'm like, when I set up the appointment, I told them I don't have any left. I've been out for too long.
Yeah.
Well, then you can't get contacts. I'm like, okay, that doesn't make sense because plenty of people have to come and get contacts for the first time. And she just was like shaking her head while I was talking to her. It like got so bad that I just left, canceled my appointment, and like filed a complaint. And they were like, oh my God, she did what? Like, it was just, somehow I went out into public and met like the one person who's worse than me at dealing with people.
You know,
and she's to be a receptionist.
They call that Murphy's Law, but that sounds like Duray's Law. Like the odds of you interacting with a person finally, that's going to be what it is. But like her thinking is like, why are you here in this restaurant? Do you have any food in your stomach? No. That's why I'm here. No, you have to come here with a full stomach and be brimming to the top full of delicious food. So,
I mean, frankly, I was like, I'm here to get glasses and contacts. Like, it really shouldn't be that complicated that I'm wearing glasses. Like, chill, lady. I want to be more like optimistic about people. It just seems like everybody's so. It felt like the pandemic made it really easy to just draw lines that were maybe like unfair to people, where it was like, well, you don't care about people's health. And it was telling in some ways, right? Like how easily people put up a huge bitch fit if they were inconvenienced in the slightest of ways, because fuck the rest of humanity. And it just felt very telling of like, oh, this is why I get so upset when I go out in public, because I try to be considerate of others. And I'm right when I think that the majority of people don't care about other people. Like they just want to do what's cool for them.
Well, yeah. I mean, you know, to bring it back to a different tragedy so long ago, I remember when we first had enhanced security protocols at airports going back 20 years after 9/11. And I just remember this one guy was like, "Oh my God, what?" And I'm like, "Do you remember why we're doing this right now? Why we have to go through this? Did you?" I mean, I didn't say any of this because that's not me. You know, it's like it's all staying in here, and I'm just like this asshole. And and literally it was like, I don't care about any of that. I just don't understand why I can't bring this, you know, this Gatorade that I have finished, why I can't walk through security with him. Like, just because it's the fucking rules. Sometimes it's just the rules. Okay. And sometimes, you know, the rules and sometimes a stupid rule is going to still have to be followed, whether it's a good rule or not. You know, some people don't like to wear seatbelts, but I'm pretty sure that they can save your life if you are in a car accident. You know, but what about if well, you know, maybe, you know, what if I end up in the water and I'm unable to get out? I'm like, all right, well then you're fucked. Okay. Then you're unable to unfasten yourself. But in general, people don't like rules. And I think that this age of the pandemic, a lot of the rules, a lot of people didn't understand. But I'll tell you the thing about being at Disneyland yesterday. They tell you got to wear your mask except if you're actually somewhere that you're allowed to eat. And maybe it's just because it's early. Maybe it's because it's only 25% of the people. I did not see the people trying to walk around with their mask off. I saw people that had it under their nose because they don't understand how to actually put their mask on their face. But I think in general, you know, people want to, but you're going to always find somebody that like the rules are not for me, you know, but,
well, I get it. Sometimes like today I was annoyed. The place where I was having this appointment in a hospital. And when I walk in, they're like, oh, I was wearing a mask. And they're like, oh, we want you to wear our mask. And I was like, cool. So I put their mask on and then put my mask back over it. So now I'm double masked because I'm in a hospital. I'm like, that doesn't seem like a bad idea, especially where I'm like a week away from getting my shot. I just don't really want to risk anything, right? They're like, so I get up to the reception. She's like, are you wearing our mask? I'm like, yeah. And I like pulled the other one off to show her. She's like, can you wear it on top? I'm like, wouldn't that make it less effective? She's like, I'm like, so you just want me to wear one mask instead? And she's like, yeah. And I was just like, this is when you're losing me. Cause it's like, I'm going over what you're asking and you're chastising me for it. Like, I just wish that people understood common sense with rules. Right. And I'm not like, so it's like, I understand when people get pissed off where they're like, well, you know, this doesn't make any sense. And it's like, great. Sometimes you just got to deal with it. Did I just take the mask off and deal with it? Yes. Was the rule absolutely ludicrous and stupid and actually less helpful than what I was doing? Also, yes. But I didn't make a huge stink about it. I just did it because it's like, let's just not make everything have to be so overcomplicated. And it also feels like this coinciding with like the real blatant schism in the Republican Party of like people who believe in facts and people who don't like them at all. It's just like, it just
sure, that's one way to look at it.
Little face. I mean, it is what it is, right? Like there are facts, and some people have just decided it's not cool. Like you're getting people who are elected officials being like, it was just like a visit, like a regular social visit to the Capitol. Like, how can you say that when people died? Like you clearly don't want to acknowledge reality, and that's your thing now, I guess. I guess that's a cool thing to do.
Well, our pal Matt and Casey makes the point that mask rules are political, which is the problem. I definitely agree with that. And Dominica Saxon, who we know lives in Idaho, most people around there don't wear them. No stores required anymore, even though no one followed their policy anyway. I think you're seeing a lot of national chains that it is their policy. And I don't know about around the country, but I know that you still can't eat even outside at a Chick-fil-A. They're like, nope, go take it somewhere else. We don't want to deal with it. You know, there's national policies that a lot of stores have, and they're like, yeah, we don't really care what your state says. If you're going to come into Lowe's, the home goods store, you're going to wear something. You're going to wear a mask on your face. You know,
it's hard. Like I agree with Matt in the sense it absolutely, emphatically has become political. But the problem therein lies that, like, didn't it become political when the person who was supposed to just read this fucking thing said, well, I'm not going to do that, and that's for pussies. And he's like the leader of your cult of personality. It didn't have to be political at all. It could have just been something we all did. And some people would have been anti-masker vaxxers because that exists. But it wouldn't have been a political through line if the leader of the free world didn't make a point about it just because he wanted to be a tough guy and like lie about all the things he was going to end up doing, like getting experimental treatments and vaccines that he says not to get.
Well, yeah, and I mean that was the interesting thing because you had you had celebrities. You even had our Vice President Kamala Harris saying that she didn't know if she was going to want to get a vaccine because Trump was president. And so then the people who are telling you to get vaccines now, and the ones who are saying they don't want to, I think they switched after the election. And it's not that cut and dried, but there are definitely examples. There are people you can point to, and it's just like. This is your guy's thing. If you were a Trump guy, this is your vaccine. Like he did this. He's still telling people to get it, and they're like, I don't want it. But I don't know.
That's the unfortunate. I think it's interesting to find out that people were like that about the polio vaccine when it came out. There were anti-vaxxers then, people that were like, I'm not going to do it, and it's not good for us.
Yeah.
So obviously this is a thing that's been around for a long time. I don't have a problem with that. I also agree that everything's become overly stupidly political. Even the fact, I'm sure it's, I don't know, Israel and Palestine, right? Like, not even to get into that, but easily just to talk about, you can tell the allegiances different outlets have based on the way they tell the stories.
Absolutely.
Right?
I agree with that.
There was an eviction issue with the Israelis and some people at a mosque, or 600 people got shot with rubber bullets during Ramadan, right? Like, it's kind of a huge difference in the way you tell a story where it's like one's an atrocity and the other is like a little thing that happened. So it's just like the fact that we're doing that with facts still and have always done it is what makes me sad. I just wish that now that we're in this digital age of information's available, that there wasn't so much disinformation that people were so apt to just like gobble right up.
Yeah, no, I definitely, I mean, I think that sums it up, that it sucks. Just a couple of comments before we wind things down. Kemi Egan, I started watching Cats and couldn't make it through the first half hour because of how shitty it was. I have to say that its shittiness is what I loved about it, but I also wasn't high. Matt, I made it through 12 minutes of Cats on an airplane recently. Rough. And that's right. Matt gets his joke read on the show because he donated to the GoFundMe that Zach was on. Zach was on the show because of our friend Matt and Casey. He really is our sugar daddy. I mean, you think about all the barbecue we've gotten from him, and I'm not exaggerating. The only merch that exists are the mug and the T-shirt, and we only have those because of Matt. And I don't need to put this show on Patreon because we have Matt. He's our patron. He's the patron saint of Bladtcasting.
He's like all the validation we need.
Yeah. And Kame Egan, this is a thought I wanted to. I would have to say, if you were tripping out, Doctor Strange would freak me the fuck out. I think that that's absolutely. I mean, there's some really wacky, mind-bending stuff in there, sure. And Matt says he enjoyed the interview. I think Zach had a good time. I hope so. I thought it was a fun way. I know I usually don't do interviews with you and Will, but I thought it would be fun to have sort of that more general conversation. Plus, you guys actually haven't had you on in a while. I miss you guys. So we'll have me, you, and Will. We're going to talk about because I know because they were or are on HBO Max. I know you've seen both Mortal Kombat and King Kong versus Godzilla, and I have a lot of thoughts. And I didn't want to sort of drag down the conversation with Zach to force it in there because I thought it was more fun to talk about some of these crazy horror movies. I guess I should apologize for making you watch Frankenhooker because we didn't talk about it that much and you didn't like it. And you didn't like it.
It was one of those. I'm glad I watched it so that I know what you're talking about because it's one I'm sure you guys have referred to at some point or whatever. But it's just like I don't know. I those movies are always hit or miss for me, right? Like it either gets you or it doesn't.
Yeah. Well, we will. Are you excited for anything that's coming out? By the way, because I was wondering, and I didn't know if I was gonna. I didn't have any time because I went to Disneyland yesterday. Because I asked both you and Will if you were going to see. I'm sort of intrigued by the fact that there's this Chris Rock version of Saw that's going to come out. Not because I think it's going to be amazing. I'm just sort of intrigued. I'm like, well, what is that guy going to do when he takes this property? Is that something you would see?
Until the reviews came out and just panned it.
Okay.
I actually universally getting to like shat on from what I've seen, which is
I have not read any reviews of it, so that makes a lot more sense now that you say that. Because I was just like, well, that could be interesting, but apparently it is not. But is there anything that you're really excited for that's coming out that you've heard about? I know I'm looking forward to finally getting to see Black Widow and Venom vs. Carnage, or it's called There Will Be Carnage. That'll be in September. And Sony doesn't mess around. They're like, only in theaters. Yeah, but what if we want to get it? No, only in theaters. Did you hear us?
I'm really excited for a lot of the Marvel stuff coming out. Like Shang-Chi, that looks really cool to me.
I think be cool. Yeah.
I watched that guy's show on Netflix, Kim's Convenience.
Yeah, how is that show?
It's interesting because I think he addresses it where it's like there's some racism that's in this movie about Korean immigrants. But it made me feel guilty for laughing sometimes. But I was also like, but at the same time, I think these people are in on it. And there are real genuine stories being told, especially if it gets later in. I enjoyed it. It's kind of a throwaway show. It's nothing amazing and it's not breaking any ground, but it's got some good quips in there. But it's definitely like early on, especially when it's like the mom and pop just have these super over the top accents. You're like, okay, what's happening here? This doesn't seem right.
This doesn't seem right. I'm looking forward to that stuff. I've only ever seen 1/2 hour of one Fast and Furious movie. So the fact that they're like, come back to the theater, I'm like, not for you, Vin Diesel. No. Like, I don't need to do that.
I'm trying to think like what else is coming out this summer that I'd be looking forward to.
So much stuff keeps getting like, how about next year? You know what I mean? Yeah. There is enough stuff that like even Black Widow was supposed to come out it was supposed to come out 1.5 years ago, but it was going to come out like 2 weeks ago. And they're like, how about July? They're like, not just yet.
Yeah.
So
did you see, if I have one thing I think you'd enjoy, Invincible on Amazon?
I've heard a lot about that. You like that?
I really liked it. I was because it came out almost like coinciding with Falcon Winter Soldier for the first few weeks, and I was like, this cartoon is way better than that show. Like I really dug it because it's like they use the cartoon to do the things they can't do in a live action series.
That's fair.
But all like the heart and the actors are like, it's got a lot of really good voice talent. Like J.K. Simmons plays Omni-Man and Steven Yeun plays Invincible, and it's like those two are just like kicking ass. Minari, which I also saw with Steven Yeun, that's probably one of the best movies I've seen recently. Like I'm on a little
the grandma who won the Oscar was great in that movie. I thought, like, because
by the way, you little bastards.
We were talking before about when, John Travolta going full R word, and look, when a character has a stroke, you can play it a few different ways. And I don't know. I mean, because my grandma had a stroke, and I remember interacting with her afterwards. It was very believable because it's like you don't snap your fingers and all of a sudden, you can't interact with people. You're just different. And I thought she was great in both parts of that movie. So I was glad to see her win. And the fact that she flirted with Brad Pitt when she accepted her Oscar was all very sweet and all that. But there's been some good stuff that's come out. And that Invincible show, I'm actually glad you mentioned it. I do need to write it down. I'm that guy now. If I don't write it down, I'm not going to remember to watch it. Not because I don't want to, not because I don't trust you. I'm just literally going to forget. But I've heard good things about that. Did you like Falcon and Winter Soldier at all? Or
I liked it. It was just, I really liked where it was going. It just felt like it got rushed. It just
a little bit.
The penultimate episode, because it was so much like build up and like montage. I was like, oh, they're going for it on the finale. So I think really what happened with that show is I was sold. And then they gave me a penultimate where I was like, okay, I really wish this was more building of the climax than like a Rocky montage. But okay, well, we got a montage. They're going to kill it in the finale and give us like an extra long 1.5-hour finale. Nope. The finale just felt like it was the weakest episode, which is just like really unfortunate because that's what's going to be the lasting impression for most people. It's nothing where I'm like overall the series was bad or anything specific where I'm like they needed to do all these things differently. It just felt like you either didn't have enough time or you needed to do less episodes and condense some of these story points.
Yeah. And then watching the behind the scenes thing, you can see that the impact that having to stop down for as many months as they did for COVID definitely impacted it. But at the same time, the same thing happened to WandaVision. And I don't know, I felt like, I mean, I really liked both of those shows. It's going to be a little bit more of a trifle, but I'm excited because MODOK premieres on Hulu on Friday.
Yeah, that looks so good. The MODOK.
Yeah, the showrunner is actually a friend of a friend. My friend Tim Sicardo has been on the show a few times, so he's going to be on Marvel Movie Talk a week, so the 28th, Friday the 28th. So if you want to talk, if you guys and women, men and women out there, and in everything in between. If you want more Marvel talk, make sure you check out on the Bladtcast YouTube network, the Marvel Movie Talk. Right now, Fridays at 2 p.m. Pacific, but once Loki starts, we're going to be Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Pacific. So that is, I think, June 6th. Well, Jeff, it's great to get to catch up because if we didn't do a podcast at all, I don't know that I would ever get you to, we have good texts, but we would never talk. We would communicate probably forever, but I don't know that we would ever actually have a conversation. So I'm glad that you had time. I thought it was fun talking to Zach, bringing somebody into it, but you, Will, and I will have to find a time maybe as soon as next week and figure out when we can talk about some of these movies that we've actually seen. But I am going to definitely check out Invincible. Is the whole series out or is it just...
the whole first season's out.
Okay. Now. What am I in for? 10 episodes, 13 episodes?
I think it's 8 episodes.
Because
they released like 5. They released 3 at first, and then I think they did weekly after that until it was about 8 episodes. They're like an hour-long episodes, so they're like long cartoon. I think.
Wow, that's a lot of that's a lot of like Korean animators drawing very quickly.
I could be mistaking that, but I feel like they were like hour-long episodes, like full legit episodes. And again, they have Gillian Jacobs, Jason Mantzoukas.
Cool.
Zachary Quinto, like they got a lot of people in it.
Well, very cool. All right, Jeff. Well, Dominican Saxon says he'd buy a Patreon, so we could have 2. And because it's Matt, anything new in Jeff World dog update? How's MJ?
She's good. She was actually just in here playing with a ball a second ago. She's become super playful and like little queen. She's built herself a fort of toys around her bed that she locks across all the time, and she'll like take her toys in and like sleep on top of them like Smaug. So it's great. She's loving it.
And you don't want people to follow you on social media because you don't want to set the expectations. But at Jeff Durant, Yeah.
I'll try and interact with them. I re-downloaded Instagram because I got bored.
Yeah,
but it's like, I don't know.
What about
It's
Do-Ray
so easy
Jeff? Do you think we should hear from Do-Ray Jeff again? It's been a while from him.
I can try and do some tweets, but I feel like whenever I think about tweeting something, I just worry that it's either going to like piss people off or give them the wrong impression. And I just stopped doing it because I feel like every time I read Twitter, I'm just like, oh, shut up, person. So I'm like, I don't want to be that person who everyone else wants to shut up.
Yeah. Sorry, a couple more thoughts from Dominicus Saxon. He wore a mask for a few months even after he got COVID, which made for a sucky January. You know what? That's Dominicus Saxon for you. Until this second, I didn't even know that he had COVID. You know, he just kept his head down, kept working, kept listening to the Bladtcast. I mean, that's probably what healed him, don't you think, Jeff? That's probably the only thing that brought him back. Yeah.
Like you in the news would say, that's the power of love.
The power of love. And he does agree, politics make him sad, and I don't understand why people gobble up without seeing if it's true or not. And it's easier to just ignore all of it because having to see if it's true involves homework. So maybe it's just easier to just be like, yeah, well, you know, let's see what cartoons are good. You know, let's watch some of those horror movies that Zach talked about, you know, earlier. So anyway, well, Jeff, as always, delightful to have you join us. And then, so when's your next shot? Is it this week? Your second shot?
Next Monday, exactly a week.
Okay. So, we'll have to see how you're handling it before we, schedule our next show, but, we'll figure it out.
Everybody else in my family had light symptoms. So I'm assuming since I have the same DNA as them, like that shouldn't be too bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I was really tired, but I was also like just so hungry that weekend. I'm like, well, I guess I have to eat everything. Oh, well. Anyway, thanks to everybody joining us in the live chat and everybody just watching and listening after the fact at Bladtcast, Bladtcast. And of course, the Bladtcast is the website, like the Bladtcast on Facebook. Bladtcast.com is actually what I meant to say, Bladtcast. I'm at Christian DMZ. You can find me Twitter, Instagram, everywhere in between, but that's all the time we have now. And look, I had this here the whole time, all those times that I wish I had the bell and I don't use it. I had it and I didn't use it until right now. And thanks again. This is also our sugar daddy, Matt and KC. We wouldn't have that bell if it weren't for him. Anyway, thanks again, everyone. And we will see you next time